Hello and welcome to Scrushy on Business. Well, we've got a great show for you today. We've got a lot of things we want to talk about. We're going to be talking about LBOs. You know, we talked about leverage buyouts on our last show, and we covered companies that were filing bankruptcy, companies that had problems over the last 5, 10 years. And today we're going to dig deeper into the leverage buyouts. You don't want to miss this show. You know, it's all going to be about the who, the what, the when, and how, and what happened, and why it happened, and these kind of things. And so if you're in business or you're building a business and you want to understand, how do these things happen? Who does leverage buyouts? Why do they do leverage buyouts? We're going to be talking about it today. So I'm Richard Scrushy. This is Scrushy on Business, and we're coming to you from Magnolia, Texas. Absolutely. I tell you, it's a beautiful day in Magnolia, Texas today. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. So let's just jump right into it. We want to talk directly about some of the great buyouts, some of the winners and the losers. Some of them worked, some of them didn't work. We got to talk about the good. We got to talk about the bad and the ugly. So let's just in kind of a general way, let me tell you about some of the companies where there were leverage buyouts, and we'll jump right into those. But you remember last week we were talking about the leverage buyouts, and we were talking about how some of the businesses actually cratered after the leverage buyout, and some of that was due to the fact that interest rates went up, and then these companies were over leveraged, and they had to start cutting costs in order to be able to survive. Well, in that process, here's what happened. The culture of the company went out the window in some cases, and so you have people leadership who is involved in bringing vision into these companies, and these companies get started up with. They have a culture. The visionary brings a great culture to the company, and in that culture, it has a lot to do with the esprit de corps within the business, and people that are committed and they have vision, and they want to make it the best they can, and there's a lot of energy and a lot of compassion towards the work that they're doing. But sometimes in a leverage buyout, they start slashing costs. Some of those people that are part of that culture and that are carrying that esprit de corps within that culture and within that organization, sometimes they're cut out. They're not there anymore. They lose their jobs because they're slashing costs. And then sometimes when you start slashing costs, people are they're devastated because they see what's happening to the quality. They were committed to the company, and now they see that even the new owners are changing the game plan, and they're changing the game plan to the extent that it's no more fun to work there. It's not fun anymore. We're not doing what we came here to do. We're not even to build the company we want to build. And so we start seeing things beginning to go down. Some of the companies that were involved in leverage buyouts, Walgreens, for example, that was a $23.7 billion deal. And there's a company called Sycamore Partners that came in and put up the money. And usually in a leverage buyout deal, and we'll just talk briefly about this, you have a certain amount of equity and a certain amount of debt. So you want to leverage it means debt. They're going to leverage it. They're going to go out and they're going to borrow money, and they're going to put debt on the company. And then they're going to come in with a slug of equity on top of that so that they can match it up, have enough to be able to buy the company. So usually the shareholders, the shares are depressed in public companies. This is where you see leverage buyouts. So, maybe the company had been trading at $50 a share and now it's trading at $15 a share for whatever reason. The industry now is been squeezed, and we saw a lot of that through COVID. We've seen it with interest rates coming up. Some industries have been hurt. Well, when those share prices get low enough, companies says, well, wait a minute now. I'm trading at $15 a share. This company's worth $25 a share, $50 a share, $35, whatever. And they start talking about buying it out. So what they do is they say, well, you know what? Shoot, we ought to just leverage this thing up, buy it out, take it away from the shareholders in the public market, and then when the market comes back, we'll take it back out public again. And that's what they do. So they might come in and say, we'll give you shareholders a 30 or 40% increase in the value over what the stock's trading at today, and it's still undervalued. So they're still not going to pay what they think the stock actually is worth. So that's how leverage buyout is done. So they borrow the money, they'll bring in a leverage buyout fund, and some of the funds that you'll see doing that, KKR is really big on that, Apollo Global Management, Blackstone, KKR. And it's interesting. I met with, and there was a time I was looking at doing a leverage buyout on HealthSouth, and when the stock got beat up and it was low and it was undervalued, we talked to the Blackstone, the KKR folks, and And there's another company called Bain Capital. We talked to them as well. And hindsight's 2020. I kind of wish I had done that. And if I'd done that, I'd still be running the company today. And I should have, because I built the company, and somebody else is running my company that I built today, and taking credit for the millions and millions of dollars of all the hospitals and all the deals that I did that are generating revenue today. What's really interesting. I bought hospitals back in the late 80s and the 90s, and they still have those hospitals, and they're still running those hospitals, and they're still producing very, very good returns. So, see, we're now out. I mean, we're going on, 40 years. I mean, 30 and 40 years of properties that I bought and built for that company, and they're still producing revenues every day. But some of the other companies, another company, Endeavor Group, some of you may know that. I mean, I think Endeavor owns WWE. They own several, talent organizations and whatnot. But that was a huge levered buyout. That was a $25 billion leveraged buyout. And there's the organization that did that is a company called Silver Lake. And they came up with the equity to do that transaction. A company called Hologic, that was an $18.3 billion. And Blackstone did that deal in another organization called TPG. Smartsheet. Many of you know what a smart sheet is, especially if you've been in the biologics business and sold, different types of things that where they use smart sheets to keep up with all the records and whatnot. $7.3 billion. Vista Equity and Blackstone did that transaction. Squarespace, $6.9 billion. Primera did that one. Let's see, some other ones. WorldPlay, $18.5 billion. Let's see, that was a 10 times EBITDA deal. We're going to talk about the structure of these in a moment. Toshiba, we all know who Toshiba is. Toshiba was a $15.3 billion. That was a Japan Industrial Partners Consortium put together that leveraged buyout. Let's see, Twitter. We're all familiar with what Elon Musk did with Twitter, $44 billion deal. That was his. That was that leveraged buyout there. Medline Industries. Medline, that's a big healthcare supply company. $34 billion. Blackstone, and there's another buyout firm called Carlyle. So it was Blackstone, Carlyle, and H&F that did that deal. Athena Health. Athena Health is a very, very important company. Athena Health does physician office, the billing, and they handle all of the record keeping and whatnot for physician practices. Let's see others. Panera Bread, $7.5 billion. JAB Holding did that one. PetSmart, $8.7 billion. It's interesting, and we're going to talk about the winners and losers. That's what you don't want to miss. The winners and the losers. And I'm going to hold off on. Next week we'll review some of the questions that have been coming in. I don't want to do that right now. I do want to mention real quick too. Brothers Cleaner, Multi Cleaner, Degreaser. This is our sponsor. You need some of this, you can go to brotherscleaner.com and you can buy it right there. They got a special deal going on right now where you can buy 4 and you get 1 free. All right, we'll jump back to that a little later, but let's just keep talking. Yeah, that was a pretty big deal on PetSmart, $8.7 billion transaction. That was kind of interesting, huh? So let's just talk just a moment about some of these deals and kind of what they look like. Envision Healthcare, that's a company that that was $9.4 billion, and that was a KKR deal, okay? And Envision subsequently filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and they split the company from its ambulatory surgery units and reducing its debt load by 70%. KKR's equity was eventually wiped out. The deal suffered from the No Surprises Act, which kept out-of-network billing, post-COVID staffing challenges, and excessive leverage. So that was a loser. That was not a good deal. That did not. Some of them work out, and some of them don't. I mean, it's just the way it is. In the retail sector, Nordstrom's, let's see, the founding family teamed up with a Mexican retailer in Liverpool with a deal that was valued at roughly $6.25 billion. The family took 50.1% majority ownership, and the Liverpool guys got 49.9%. The aggregate purchase price for the equity was about $2.4 billion. It was financed through 868 million in cash. So see, there's your equity coming in from Liverpool, and 367 million in a shareholder loan, and then 450 million from ABL. From an ABL, a facility, and roughly 1.1 billion came from company cash. And the deal came after persistent negative public market sentiment around the department store. So, I don't know. I shop at Nordstrom. They are very pricey, by the way. I went into Nordstrom's the other day. I got to tell you this. Years ago, I bought the best blue sport coat I'd ever bought, and I paid $500 for it. And it's a great brand. It's waterproof. I love it because you can wear it when it's raining. It's a very beautiful, fits really great. It's a very good name brand. And today, I bought that probably, it's been at least 10 or 12, 15 years ago. I don't remember exactly, but I went in and that same jacket now is $2,300. So from $500 to $2,300 over the last 10 years. And so when I told the guy working there, I said, that's unbelievable, $2,300 for that sport coat. And I said, I paid $500. He said, man, you wouldn't touch it today for $500. So I was glad I bought it when I did, and it'll last for a long time. But there have been some notable, retail LBO failures. More than 15% of retailers that were acquired by PE firms over the last 15 years have filed for Chapter 11. Very interested. And this graveyard includes Toys R Us, which was KKR and Bain and Bernardo, Sports Authority, Payless Shoes, Jamboree, that was Bain Capital, Radio Shack, The Limited, Wet Seal, Nine West, all of the same pattern of massive debt, loans suffocating the ability to invest during a period of massive retail disruption from e-commerce. You know what's really interesting? I began to look at all of these companies that did really well, that were involved in leveraged buyouts, and they were all companies that we needed. I mean, there were things that people have to buy and they need. And the ones that didn't do so well were things that we didn't need, things that we could live without, like Toys R Us. I mean, you can buy toys online now. I mean, Sports Authority, we didn't have to have that store. I mean, had some good things, and I'm sure. Payless Shoe Source. I mean, it did serve, but I mean, you can get shoes in a lot of different places, right? Radio Shack kind of got outdated, with all the new technology, and I don't know whether they stayed up with it. Nine West, The Limited. I mean, you didn't have to you can buy your clothes online. You can get so many different things now. So what we've seen is the ones that have done well are the things you had to have, like healthcare. You can't buy healthcare online. You got to go. I mean, if you're sick, you're going to have to, and you had to go in the hospital. You can't do a hospital online, can you? I mean, you got to go sit in the hospital. You can't have surgery online. You can't get an MRI online. You got to go. So these companies, Athena Health, a doctor has to have, all of his billing done. He has to have all of his records kept appropriately. So, when you see these kind of buyouts, they are successful because these are things that we have to have, things you can't go without, and things like the Medline. Medline was successful. Another one, Hilton Hotels, that was a successful buyout, LBO. When you think about that, I mean, you can't stay at a hotel online. You got to go to the hotel and stay there. You got to buy that. You got to pay them. You got to be there. You got to have a bed to sleep in, right? So those kinds of things seem to have done well. And they withstood the COVID. They withstood the interest rate climbs. They were able to keep the cash flow going so they could pay that leverage down, pay that debt down. But the ones that got into trouble were the ones on things we really didn't need. So just real quick, LBOs in the restaurant sector, I just want to call them out. Subway, Dunkin' Brands. I'll just tell you how much. Subway, $9.6 billion. Dunkin' Donut Brands, okay, $11.3 billion. I mean, this is huge. Sonic Drive-Ins. You remember, the Sonic's $2.3 billion. Buffalo Wild Wings, $2.9 billion. Panera Bread, $7.5 billion. Bob Evans, Bob Evans barbecue. I mean, that's some good eating right there, folks. And I've eaten at Bob Evans all over the country. $1.5 billion. Popeyes, $1.8 billion. We know Popeyes. Krispy Kreme, $1.35 billion. I remember the day that Krispy Kreme went public. That stock came out at 14, 15 a share, and it climbed all the way up to like maybe $80 or $100 a share. I know I bought some and sold it probably on the same day when it just got totally out of line. Let's see. So this company called ROARK, ROARK Capital, they've been kind of a dominant force in the restaurant business, by the way, and they've been assembling these brands they call Inspire brands: Arby's, Buffalo Wings, Sonic, Jimmy John's, Dunkin', Baskin Robbins, and they put that whole thing into a 33,000 location empire with 33.4 billion in annual system sales. So they've snapped up all of these different companies. I see they're now seeking 20 billion valuation, and they're filing a IPO for what they call Inspire brands. So they've done a roll up. They have consolidated all these companies. They bought them they got them in there at a good price. Now they're doing a IPO for the company, which is called Inspire Brands. Very interesting. I mean, it's a great concept, and that's a way to. So, if they do that and raise that money, they're going to have a heck of a company. So let's talk about winners for a minute, because I like to talk about winners. And Hilton Hotel, that was a winner. Okay, and HCA. Hospital Corporation of America. I remember when the Frisk family took that company private, and that turned out to be a great deal. Another one, Dell Computers. Boy, they flipped that one out. They did and let me just mention this. Hilton was a $26 billion leveraged buyout. They put $5.6 billion in equity in that deal, and the debt was $20.5 billion. So that's what we've been talking about. How much debt, how much equity. $5.6 billion was in equity, money they put in, and then they went to the banks and they raised $20.5 billion. So you didn't have to. So if you're buying a $25 billion company and you're leveraging it out and taking it from public company to a private, you don't have to have the whole $26 billion. Yeah, they only had to have $5 billion, and then the rest of it they borrowed it and leveraged it. So. And let me just give you this, the debt to EBITDA, and the EBITDA, for those of you that don't know, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Basically, that's the cash flow of the company, okay? So the leverage, what they did was they leveraged it at 12.4 times the EBITDA. Okay, now that's up there. That 12.4 times EBITDA, that's kind of high, but that's what it was. And they had a hold period for 7 years. The internal rate of return was 39%, and the profit on the deal was $14 billion, okay? They did an IPO in 2013 and paid $14 billion. Wow. HCA, Hospital Corporation of America, 2006. The deal valued at $33 billion. Again, $5 billion in equity, and then the debt was $18 billion. They did the leverage on this now. See the difference? The leverage on this was between 5 and 6 times versus the last one, which was 12.4 times. So you look at leverage of 5.5, 6 times, which is half what it was on the Hilton Hotel. So not anywhere near as high. And the internal rate of return on that was 27%. And they had a multi-billion-dollar profit on that. I don't know exactly what it was, but they did an IPO, came back out and went public in 2011. So private in 2006, public in 2011. Dell Computer, 2013, okay? They did a $24.4 billion deal, and out of that, $8.8 billion was it was equity. That was money invested, and the debt was 15.6. Now listen, look at this. The leverage, the debt to EBITDA on this one was only 2 to 3 times. Totally different ball game. Okay, 2 to 3 times. And they held it for 6 years. Let's see, internal rate of return was 18%, and they made billions of dollars on that. And they relisted the company in 2018. So 5 years they were private. Medline, 2021, they did a deal. It was valued at $34 billion, and the equity invested was $17 billion, and they had $17 billion in debt, so it was a 50-50 deal on that. And the leverage on that debt to EBITDA was 4 to 5, and the whole period was only 4 years. They had an internal rate of return that was very strong. The total profit on that deal was $17 billion at the IPO when they took it back out in 25. Not a bad deal. $17 billion. You see why people do leverage buyouts? If it works, and it works really well, everybody gets filthy rich. So it makes a lot of sense. I should have done it on Health South back when the stock got beat up. If I'd have done it then, brought it back out, cash flow was incredible. We had great company. We had wonderful business. And I just wasn't smart enough and didn't move enough, I guess. I don't know. But anyways, I wish I'd done it. Okay, let's talk about some losers, okay? This TXU, this Energy Future Holdings, this KKR, TPG, and Goldman Sachs, they all put money into this deal. And so that was how that deal went. And let's see, they did, it was the worst LBO in history, they say. The consortium had paid $45 billion for the deal. They put $8 billion in equity, $36 billion in on the debt, okay? It was a Texas utility company. They were betting that the natural gas prices would rise. Instead, fracking caused gas prices to plummet, okay, destroying the economics of that natural gas deal. Okay, so what happened then? So it destroyed the economics of the TXU's coal-fired plants. And then they filed bankruptcy in 2014. Their debt had grown up to $49.7 billion. The entire $8 billion equity check was totally wiped out. They lost $8 billion on that. And even Warren Buffett had put money in. Warren Buffett lost $2 billion, okay, calling it a big mistake. So even Warren Buffett makes a mistake. So there you have it. He lost $2 billion on that deal. Another deal that did not work out at all was Caesars Entertainment. So let's see, Apollo and TPG. Let's see, 2008, Apollo and TPG bought Harrah's Caesars for $30 billion, okay? The financial crisis devastated Las Vegas, right? Tourism. And then, of course, as the situation deteriorated, let's see, left the creditors holding the debt in a really diminished bad company. Creditors allege that there had been looting. Caesars filed for bankruptcy in 2015 with $24 billion in debt. Apollo and TPG stake was reduced from 60% to 16% to settle lawsuits, and Apollo valued its regional equity at 20 cents on the dollar. So that was not a good deal. That was one of the losers. Caesars went down, okay? Toys R Us, Bain Capital and Bernardo put the money in. Let's see. The PE firms contributed $1.3 billion in equity, and they loaded a $5.3 billion in debt on the company. Annual interest payments were This is interesting. The annual interest payments on that money was $400 to $500 million, and that consumed virtually all of the operating cash flow, leaving nothing for the e-commerce investments, store renovations, and competing with Amazon. So the PE firms extracted $464 million in fees. That's a lot in fees. Wow. And interest while the company slowly died. Amazing, okay? Bankruptcy in 2017 led to the liquidation of 800 plus stores and 33,000 job losses. Now, who was greedy on that deal, huh? Think about that. Look what happened, all the people that were employed. That was a great company at one time. I used to love to take my kids to Toys R Us and walk through there. It was fascinating. My kids loved it. So, that's kind of the way it ended up. Those were some pretty big losers there. A company called Envision was another loser. And so that happens. So you got winners and you got losers, okay? Just real quick, the structure, let's just take a look at the structure of one of these deals. And let's look at Hilton Hotels, for example, $26 billion deal. The way that went down, they had senior mortgage notes. They had A, and they had B, and they had C. The A's were $3.6 billion. Those were 6-year terms, and then they had zero spread. They were at LIBOR, the zero spread over LIBOR. It was just LIBOR, and then they had the B notes were $2 billion, 6 years, and they were 1 point over LIBOR, and then the C's were same thing, $2 billion, 6 years, and they were 1 over LIBOR. And they had a second lien mortgage of $1 billion. That was 6 years. That was 2% over LIBOR. And then they had a mezzanine. They had a 1, a 2, and a 3 mezzanine. And the first mezzanine was $8.3 billion. It was a 7-year deal, and it was 3 over LIBOR. And the second one was $1.8 billion. It was 8 years, 4 over LIBORs. And the last one, the third, was $2.1 billion. It was 9 years, and it was 5 over. So really, the total debt, if you blend all that out, was 2%. And let's see, they were able to do that on a multiple of 12.4 EBITDA. Well, let's see, it started out, if you look at all of it together, it was 12.4%. 12.4 times the EBITDA. So interesting. Equity was 5.7, and the total deal was $26.5 billion. So there you have it. So you look at these deals, and there's a lot of money. It's billions and billions of dollars. And so having a winner like HCA and a winner like Hilton, and then having these losers like TXU Energy and then Toys R Us and kind of what happened on these deals is kind of scary, isn't it? And then you see the loss. I mean, even like you said, Warren Buffett lost $2 billion on that one deal. So these things, sometimes they make sense and sometimes they don't. And, again, let's just take a look at the things we had to have, the things that we have to have, like a hotel to sleep in, they did fine. The things that, we have to have the HCA, we have to have the hospitals. They did well. Those hospitals cash flowed really well. We don't have to have Toys R Us. We didn't have to have it. And so, in bad times, some of these businesses they just don't have the business. And when things go down, and you've got all this debt loaded up on it, it just doesn't work. You end up with what they call the death spiral. Okay, starts going down. That's what happened in COVID, and so many restaurants closed. We've been talking about this, for the last few weeks. Restaurants, they didn't have the people coming in, and then you had Grubhub and DoorDash taking so much of the cut of their business, and you lost the in-house, people sitting there and eating and ordering and having desserts and drinks and whatnot. And you just couldn't make any money. And so many chains, beautiful, wonderful chains, just went out of business. So, all right, so let's just talk about what separates the winners and the losers, and then we're going to wrap this episode up. Okay, winners have these traits, okay? They have cash flow, stable, recurring cash flow. Hospitals, hotels, medical supplies, even enterprise software where you got recurring revenues, okay? And they're going to get paid. And then, of course, CEOs play a role, y'all. I'm telling you, you got brilliant CEOs. They can lead you sometimes through some pretty bad storms. People that are willing to invest in the business rather than pull fees out. That's so important. Clear operational transformation thesis beyond just cost cutting. There are other things you can do other than just cutting costs, right, to make the bottom line. And people that are willing to ride out the downturns. Companies, that's one of the biggest problems we have with shareholders today and institutional funds. They don't want to take the time. As soon as they see it starting to go down, they bail out. They don't want to ride it out. And that's a change from the old school. Back when I first got started, people would give you a little bit of room to move and know that you had some downturns, and they were willing to eject a little extra capital and help you get through those tough times. Now, losers share these traits. You have, Caesars bet on Vegas tourism, and they lost. Okay, well, that happened, and things were down. Times were down, and COVID came, and people just weren't traveling, and they had over leveraged the business, and it put them out of business. The TXU folks, they bet on the gas prices. That didn't happen. It put them out of business. Let's see, Toys R Us. They had the retail markets versus Amazon, buying on Amazon. You get everything you want on Amazon. So that's what they were up against. They couldn't overcome that. And debt levels were so high that when you have a softness in your revenue or softness in your customer base coming in and buying and spending money, and you've got all this debt, it just triggers failure. It really does. And the company then with all that debt and paying the payments on the debt and whatnot. It starves the company, and things just begin to come apart. And even some of the best managers and I've known people who have gone to companies that were had problems like that to try and help them solve it. And then but they were unable to. And I can name two or three companies that I've seen that actually happen. So when a company finds themselves where the debt is eating up more than 50% of their EBITDA, they start a spiral that becomes really very difficult. That's why you got to make sure that you don't over leverage a company. And let's see, Blackstone injected $800 million into Hilton during the crisis. KKR, Bain, and Vornado extracted $464 million from Toys R Us. You see the difference? One put $800 million in, another one pulled out 400 something million. And when they pulled that money out of Toys R Us, it devastated them. Okay, they didn't have the money to survive. Some tough times, right? So some fatal things happened in those companies, and that really, really caused their demise and caused them to go down. So that's what we want to talk about today. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to Scrushy on Business, and hit that subscribe button there on YouTube. We need you to be notified every time we put up a new one, and we really appreciate you watching. We're going to talk about more and more things in business, but I wanted to cover some of the leverage buyout issues and talk about some of the companies that were winning and some of that were losing. There are a lot more. We've covered a lot of information on this show, and we're going to continue to. So today we've what happened, how did it happen, and who did it happen to, and that's what we've talked about. Remember, Brothers Cleaner. Yes, sir. That's a multi-purpose cleaner. It cleans carpet, floors, furniture, windows, countertops, fabrics, cloth, linen, plastics, leather, stainless steel, glass, wood, marble, granite, vehicles, boats, RVs, interior, external. Clean your boat, clean your car, inside and out. Remember, it's a neutral pH. It has no smell. It's non-toxic, no acid, no alkalines. It's VOC free, and it is earth friendly. And if you don't have some of this to clean your house, and your wife doesn't have any of it, or your husband doesn't have any, y'all need to get them some. They need this right here, I promise you. And this is manufactured right here in Texas, and we use it every day. And if you've got pets, you ought to have some of this to clean your pet stains up. You need to have it to clean your car. I keep it in my car. I clean my dashboard, my windows, everything. Cleans windows better than Windex. Give it a try. You can go on brotherscleaner.com, and you can buy it right there. Now, if you have a message and you want to say something to me, you want to ask us some questions, you can go to info, at Scrushy on Business and .com. You go check us out, and we'd love to hear from you, and we'll be glad. We will next week. I'm pretty sure we'll be able to cover some of the questions that have come in, but we wanted to knock this out today, talk about these LBOs, and just share some of that information with you. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and I hope you'll watch our next episode. So you have a great day.